Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition, a special edition, Saturday edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes. And you know what it means when I pop on Saturday mornings, or at least Saturday mornings on the eastern seaboard in North America, which, by the way, which is, the center of the known universe. That means when I pop on Saturday, that means that inevitably we have a pay-per-view happening that same weekend. And it just so happens that this weekend, unless you haven't been paying attention, or maybe you have been paying attention, I mean, there's at some point, we are going to have the 2021 edition of WWE Elimination Chamber. That's happening tomorrow evening, Sunday night. And to walk through this quintessential pay-per-view, this unfathomable juggernaut of importance and relevance within the WWE pay-per-view schedule, I am joined by none other than Twitter personality, YouTube gamer personality as well. Garrett Kidney is joining me this morning for the very first time, and it's a pleasure to talk with you, Garrett. Thank you for being here.
I don't think in my entire life I've been given a more derogatory introduction than Twitter personality and YouTube gamer.
And just because as it came out of my mouth,
I've reached the bottom. It's I'm at the end of the pit.
And I was
I am now. This is where I am.
And just before we got online, what did I tell you? I told you my brain isn't complete. It's not completely warmed up yet, right? True, right?
YouTube gamer. Oh,
I apologize. Sorry.
Gamer's bad enough. If you're like gamer Garrett Kidney, it would be like, oh no.
But the thing is, I meant it out of love because I am subscribed to your YouTube channel, and I love your videos. I think your reviews are always on point. You're an extremely intelligent individual, and that's why I'm one part honored, one part threatened to have you here this morning. So it was out of love, but as it was coming out of my mouth, I'm like, oh no.
This is what I've reduced this man to.
I'm sorry.
Hey Ward, how you doing?
Oh God, it'll only go up from here, right? That's
we're talking about WWE Elimination Chamber and all its thoroughly announced wrestling matches.
Exactly. But look, okay, let's put this then into your own hands, Garrett. Like, if why don't you tell us like a little bit about what you do and stuff. Better than what I can do this morning, apparently.
I'm a Twitter account. I send tweets quite regularly. As you can see, that my face there, that's my face. That's actually how I exist at all times. Mm-hmm. I'm actually not a person. I'm a sentient AI that just sends tweets mostly about TNA wrestling. That's how that works. That photo actually was painted by... I was teaching briefly for 6 months before I dropped out of college. So I was teaching the kids in secondary school, what the Americans would consider the equivalent of high school.
Sure.
Do you call them high school in Canada as well?
In some parts, yes, but in my part, it is called secondary school.
So yes, again, Canadians, reasonable people who call things correct names. But yeah, one of my students drew that for 6 months, and I didn't pay him for it. So it's been my Twitter profile for 3.5 years.
Hang on. Now, did you get the rights to use this image, Garrett? Am I gonna get a takedown for this?
Yeah, you're gonna get DMCA'd by this kid from Ireland. It's gonna be like, hey, that's my intellectual property.
It was for educational purposes only, Mr. Kidney.
Yes. This is you got to put that YouTube thing that people put there and doesn't mean anything. It's like, this is fair use purposes. It's like, buddy, that's not how that works.
This is satire. Exactly. These are all the things that protect us. Thank you very much, Garrett, for joining me today. I really, really do appreciate it. It's literally the first opportunity we ever do get to chat. Imagine that in 2021, people actually talking to each other. That's cool. But when you can't talk to others, you do try to find ways to communicate and share thoughts and find a sense of community. And there's people joining us here live this morning who are popping in and will probably share their own thoughts on World Wrestling Entertainment, Elimination Chamber, and the like, such as Brian Payne. Good to see you this morning, Brian. Kristen Ashley, the First Lady of the MrWarrenHayes Show. She has her own
beautiful
theme
singing
song.
voice.
Thank you.
Amazing singing
Thank
voice.
you.
That's just top notch.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So far, you're the best guest I've ever had. The fifth generation Carney JY3. Good to see you as well. And Carlos Scott Frame. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me and Garrett today. Really, really do appreciate it. And you know, if you feel like it, you can give the video a thumbs up. That kind of stuff always helps. Put the link out there. But let's start talking about Elimination Chamber. This is why we're here. This is the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes,
the my whole of wrestling
Oh
pay-per-views
that
that we're here for. That's all we're here for. It's the my whole, which is very upsetting actually, because the match they added to Elimination Chamber was not in fact Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler against Lana and Naomi. It was instead Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. And maybe like I would understand, you know, the legacy of my whole is so big that they're like, that's a WrestleMania match, you know.
You think? Is this where we're at? Is this what's happening like in creative's mind? Is that this is the best thing we have going? It's the most viral sensation we've had. You know, female wrestlers referring to their anatomy, private parts of their anatomy. This is where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think they're like, we got to stretch this thing out another 7 weeks till WrestleMania. maybe somehow get it through Fastlane. They can do like a my hole in a pole match at Fastlane or something, and we can get ourselves all the way to WrestleMania with the months. How long have Lana and Nia Jax been feuding? That's been since like October earlier.
It feels like time immemorial at this point, but yeah. I think the table spots started like early fall. I really do. October
and
sounds about right.
They say there's not long-term storytelling in wrestling anymore, Warren. And this is going to be a WrestleMania match that has like 7 months build. It's the one we've all been waiting for. It's the my whole match and the table match coming together to form this cultural sensation. And that's what upsets me about Elimination. I feel bait and switched by the Elimination Chamber card. I invested in the my whole story and I didn't get it, and I'm very upset.
And so clearly this is your favorite part of the build up to what we're getting on Sunday. I'm glad it's been tickling you to that degree. Well, I mean, overall, right? Like we've had a whole bunch of stuff. We had the most bland go home show last night on SmackDown, like something that just in the. I'm sorry to continue with on this same wavelength, but within the annals of forgettable wrestling shows, I mean that one is right up there.
I am the person who had the #1 trending tweet under the my whole trending topic. So I'm the perfect person to have on this show. I'm perfectly on board with all of these my whole puns.
So would you say that this is your claim to fame at this point, Garrett?
I think so. I think I have to put that on my CV. #1 tweet in the my whole trending topic. It's one of my bigger achievements in life.
Yeah, you've got to ride this one. I mean, you know, tell the Voices of Wrestling guys you have an idea for a podcast. This is the time, man. This is
my whole podcast. Yes. Yes, the go home show. It's one of those go home shows where it's like, you know what? I'm pretty interested in Cesaro against Seth Rollins. Oh wait, that's not on the pay-per-view tomorrow or on Sunday. They did the Otis heel turn on the go home show for some reason.
Let's talk about this a little bit though. Okay, because I've been very, very much on the record here in regards to the Otis Mandy storyline that happened last year and earlier. I loved it. I thought it was one of the best things that WWE was doing, and I thought they avoided all their own personal pitfalls throughout it. And look at what happened. It got Otis over. It got Mandy. I don't know if over is the word I'm looking for, but relatable. I guess. Gave Dolph something to do. Gave Dolph something fun to do, and helped establish Sonya Deville at the same time. That to me it's a successful angle when you can do that. And when I'm talking about how it avoided all its pitfalls, at the end, Mandy didn't turn out to be like a two-faced evil woman. She picked Otis out of her own volition. And, the whole scene that they had with the pool with her dreaming, it all brought together that Mandy really did love Otis. She picked him because she was indeed in love with him. It wasn't a game. It wasn't an act. So I thought it was really, really, really well done. And then, of course, they just like pull the plug on it and everything just wilts. So to get to where we are today with Otis, I'm a bit at a loss for words, because
it's such a weird heel turn as well, because they're just having a match against the Mysterios and they refuse to honor the referee's 5 count after making a tag. They get disqualified. They slam Mysterio once and they're heels. It's like, that's your impactful heel turn? Really? That's what you're going to go with? And like, Chad Gable is desperately trying to find something to do for years now on the show. Maybe this is it. Probably not, but
when I was looking at their interaction last night, Chad Gable looked like one of these villainous Pokemon trainers.
Yeah.
From the where he's like, he's giving directions, and he's calling the moves and Otis is doing it,
He's ace trainer Chad.
There you go. But the heel turn was, like you said, came out of nowhere. And if this is where they wanted to go with Otis, if they were like, but clearly not. I mean, that would require, planning and forethought, which is not necessarily WWE's fortes. But, from the moment that he won Money in the Bank and that they split, they split he and Mandy up, he could have fallen into like, some anger, some rage issues, and he starts acting out. Like, if they really wanted to do the heel turn thing, it could have they could have extended it a bit. There were storyline reasons for him to get mad, as opposed to just like, nah, I'm not going to listen to the ref, just like you said.
Yeah, Chad points at him for a while. He gets real fired up, and now he's bad. That's about it. That's about the extent of the heel turn. Like, I don't know. Like, Otis is one of those people who's probably suffered most from not having an audience, because like his whole thing was like he got over, and like he's not the best wrestler in the world. He's not the most like super duper compelling character in the world. But when he's over and he does everything that he does and gets a reaction, it's much more bearable. And now there's nobody there, and he just exists.
I agree. He's probably one of the wrestlers who's suffered most from the no audience era, because it was all about the crowd reactions for him. That's what got him over. And no matter how many times Bruce Pritchett is going to push the pop button, it's not quite the same.
The Thunderdome loves him. They hate him. That's how you know they hit the mean button.
Well, at least this is something that's clear for me, as a simple-minded individual. At least now WWE can tell me, who's a good guy and who's a bad guy now. I just have to listen to how the Thunderdome reacts, and I appreciate that.
It's like the same thing with AEW and their tunnels. It's like it's so easy. What tunnel does he come out? Someone actually pointed out on Dynamite this week. Jackson, well, the Jacksonville Jaguars mascot, Jackson. What's his name?
I don't know.
It's Jackson.
Jackson DeVille?
It might be Jackson DeVille. That sounds right. But like, he came out the heel tunnel, and obviously they did the big reveal that he was Isaiah Cassidy all along. It's like, oh, we should have known.
But this is the... Okay, we're going to veer off course. Just because you brought it up, Kidney. Here I am using your last name. Adam Page was bringing out his lawyer, which was the mascot, to give him the contract, right? But so Adam Page had set this up, but he had set it up with Isaiah.
I think it's a double swerve. I know what you're getting at. It's like, how did Matt Hardy know to do it? But I think Matt Hardy knew he switched the contract, and it's like a double swerve. So that like when he suggests the stipulation that all of your earnings, then Matt Hardy turns it back on him to get all of his earnings, and that's how Matt Hardy gets it back around to him.
So Adam Page basically went to the mascot and like, hey, do you want to come and hand me this contract without
checking who's under the S. He's just like, oh yeah, the mascot. You're not a person, right? You're just the mascot. You don't exist under there.
Exactly. Yeah, there's probably, there's blood and guts under there, just like everyone else, right? Right. Of course.
Like, do you want to take your head off? It's like, no, that would sacrifice the integrity of my mascot life. Well, which I would respect.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I've done the mascot thing before, right? And I'd say there's different levels of mascot rules depending on how visible your mascot is. Like if it's a nationally known character from a big brand, then they're very, very strict on certain things. Whereas if you're just like putting on goofy Teletubby costumes to go to a kid's party, well then nobody cares. But I wouldn't be surprised like if the guy who does the mascot has his own locker room and can't take off his head or anything if he's not in that specific area. Because that's something that I've lived through. People around you,
keep your head on.
Pretty much. Because
I have to circle back because you said the words, I've done the mascot thing before.
Yeah.
When you say that, have you been a mascot?
Okay. So years ago, yes, I was. And I've done it many times. But I think my apex was a few years ago for a festival. I was Tony the Tiger.
Oh, that's big.
Now here, and I was with a bunch of other wannabe actors at the time. There were a bunch of us, and we were Kellogg's was the sponsor. So we had Tony the Tiger, we had Toucan Sam, we had Mr. Mini Wheat, and we had Snap Crackle Pop.
Oh, all the stars.
All the stars were there.
What a lineup.
Now, as you go to the meetings in preparation for this, it's like, they size you and they say, okay, well, you can fit. Because Tony's a tall guy. I'm a tall guy. And Tony is tall. So, they give it to the tall guy and then they get like, petite 18-year-old girls to do Snap, Crackle, Pop and that kind of stuff, So, but then they sit you down and they give you a book. A branding book, and inside the branding book you have the entire backstory for each of the characters so that you can get to know them better, so that you can incorporate them in your mascot mannerisms and
you gotta inhabit the role. Yeah,
exactly.
You can't just half-ass it. You gotta be the tiger.
Did you know Toucan Sam has a master's degree in psychology?
Wow.
I know.
Good for him. I have a master's degree in economics.
Well,
I don't use it, but I have one.
Well, look, you and Toucan Sam have something in relation to each other. He doesn't use his master's either. He sniffs out cereal with his beak.
His parents are so disappointed in him. We paid all of this money to send you to school, and this is what you do to us.
You end up in the jungle. You're taking your nephews on these dangerous escapades. Your sister keeps calling us. She's like, "Why? Where are my kids? Sam's not returning my calls."
So the Frosties people are like, when you say the Frosties, they're more than good, they're great. It's like you have to hold the grrr for this long in order to really emphasize the greatness of Frosties.
And the kids all want you to do the thing. They do the great. And you can't talk. You can't talk because you're a silent, so you just go.
But Tony the Tiger talks. I feel like it's within the brand consistency of Tony to allow you to talk.
But I couldn't talk. I like because I don't have the deep, the deep throws, so all the mascots are silent, so you can't talk. So everything that you're conveying throughout this huge branding book that they have for each of the characters is like, you have to pantomime it.
Man, they really handcuffed your ability to embrace the role.
I know.
That's a shame.
I would have been a lot more comfortable doing Mr. Mini Wheat, because Mr. Mini Wheat, he's in an existential crisis.
Aren't we all?
There you go. Look, okay, let's start talking about the pay-per-view then. Why don't we do it? And look at this, we got Ben Perizet, who's in the chat. Good to see you, Ben. We got Flo Man is here as well. Mr. Fantastic and Omar Plays. Good to see everyone. Welcome to the chat this morning. So, Elimination Chamber, just a handful of matches. They did add one last night. We're going to start talking about that one. Garrett Kidney, he's scouring the Twitter feed 24/7. He's got him. He's got the messages.
I'm locked inside at all times. I'm not allowed out. You must be always online. You must be tweeting all the time.
That's exactly it. He's like 24/7. What else is he going to do? It's a hell of a gig. The Elimination Chamber WWE Women's Tag Team Championship match. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, the champs, versus Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. That was added to the card last night. I'll tell you one thing, Garrett. If WWE were still in the business of selling pay-per-views for 30, 40, 50 bucks a pop, they would not be 3 days before a pay-per-view with like 3 announced matches, right?
One of which is in serious doubt.
Right, exactly. So, but as far as this match goes, we touched on it a little bit earlier. Baszler and Jax, Bianca and Sasha put together. Give me some thoughts on this match. How are you feeling about this one?
All right, I have a simple question for you. Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, will they get along?
There you go. Next match. No, I'm kidding.
But like that's it's the standard WWE formula. It's like these two people who aren't currently yet set to face each other at WrestleMania, but are highly likely to face each other at WrestleMania. They will team up. Will they get along? Probably not. They will implode. Bianca will challenge Sasha. Maybe because they have Fastlane coming up, which you always forget. There's another show to get to between now and WrestleMania, so they could win the belts and then drop the belts again at Fastlane, then implode, and you have the whole WrestleMania story there. But this is like as WWE staple as you get.
Well, hang on a second. I want to posit this unto ye. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler did not get along at first, and now they have become the epitome of tag team wrestling, bringing two people together in coordination and friendship. What I'm seeing here is, the question I'm going to ask here is, are Sasha and Bianca, are they going to look to Nia and Shayna for inspiration here? Are they going to turn to them, to sort of like, hey, this could be us, kind of thing?
But if you look at what got between Nia and Shayna most, it was the Royal Rumble match.
True.
Because when they had something that they fight over, that's what really drove them apart. Fair enough, they actually hate each other the entire time too, but that's what really drove them apart. So what Bianca has to do, really, I think, for this team to get it to excel, is give up her championship match at WrestleMania. She really needs to show the commitment to the women's tag team titles and be like, this is what I'm committed to. So I'm willing to give up the thing that will drive us apart in order for us to succeed. I think that's what the story should be here, right?
Now, folks in the chat, by the way, let us know who you think is going to win here. Are Nia and Shayna going to retain? Or are Sasha and Bianca going to walk out with the straps? Earlier this week, Jax and Baszler showed up on NXT TV. Let's not forget that. And they sort of tried to rattle the cages of the Dusty Classic, the women's Dusty Classic winners, Dakota Kai and Reina Gonzalez. Raquel is still not natural to me. They set the seeds for that as well, and personally, I'd like to see the women's tag titles be taken off of main roster for a while. Maybe hang around NXT. I mean, they took the time to establish a whole bunch of female tag teams over the past couple of months. Do you think that they just might retain to only lose them to the NXT ladies?
You see, I actually think Sasha and Bianca might win, just so they can get another 4 weeks of TV into a rematch, or maybe even do Sasha and Bianca going back down to NXT, which might actually be a more interesting story. It would probably be a better match, honestly. Actually, no, Shayna's good. But yeah, but Sasha and Bianca going down to face Raquel and Dakota Kai would probably be a better match, a more interesting story. It would probably give NXT a little more life because they're bigger stars. And then you can have them implode and lose the belts. So I think they will actually win the tag titles.
Honestly, I'd be down for that because I agree. It'd be a much better, much more fun match to watch than, and nothing against Shayna Baszler, of course. We know who the outlier is. We know what the problem is in this equation.
My hole. But like there's the pesky Fastlane. That's the problem. There's another show in 4 weeks, so it's like they do have to set up another bunch of matches. One, like we'll talk about it in the Raw Elimination Chamber. One of which is probably Drew and Sheamus. Like that's nearly definitely burn it off on Fastlane. But they still have another show to fill. So how do they fill a show? Switching the belts and switching them back. There you go, standard. Which they already did, but still, it'll be the story of Nia and Shayna to lose the belts and win them back.
Well, on my end, I like your story makes so much sense that it probably won't happen because it's probably the way more interest. It's a way more interesting outcome. On my end, I think Nia and Shayna are going to retain.
So do you think Sasha and Bianca explode here, or just like they're annoyed at each other that they lose?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Bianca has announced officially who she wants to be challenging for, right?
Right.
Who she wants to, what belt she's challenging for. So I think this might be her impetus. This might be the story bump where she goes where it's like next Friday she's like, yeah, you know what? I'm challenging for your title because you cost us the match or whatever. Whatever reason they decide to come up with.
You suck. I'm going to Raw and challenging Asuka.
That'd be a twist.
Story.
So, chat seems to think, it's a little. It could go either way. Could be either way. Jackson Baszler or, hey, we'll all see what happens tomorrow evening. Now, this match is a little bit. We don't know exactly what's going on. It's still being advertised. Raw Women's Champion Asuka is supposed to defend her title against Lacey Evans, who was announced to be pregnant with Ric Flair's child.
Woo!
Woo! This past Monday evening, in an absolute mess. Asuka's been an afterthought, hasn't she, Garrett?
Like you'd think the match was meant to be Lacey and Charlotte, which it's not. Asuka's just there. It's like, I'm here too, as part of this feud inexplicably. And the fact that they didn't even bother, it hasn't been a thing on their mind to be like, we've got to replace Lacey Evans in this match. She just announced she was pregnant on television, and they haven't done it. I don't know, maybe Bianca will be just like, I'm cashing in my WrestleMania title shot tonight. And it'll be Bianca and Asuka at Elimination Chamber. I don't know, who they got? Maybe that's why they saved Nia or Lana and Naomi. They might just throw like Naomi in here? I don't know.
I mean, unless Becky comes back?
Would you do that as a surprise, just to throw it away on Elimination Chamber?
I mean, I frankly, I don't know, because I'm with you. I don't know who else you have here, unless you decide to go with Charlotte, who goes back into her natural
It is just
form.
going to be Charlotte, isn't it? It's just going to be Asuka and Charlotte. That does make most. But then Charlotte would have to lose, or Charlotte's just going to win, and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, and ultimately the whole Asuka thing doesn't matter. But you know, in a bubble, if they do decide to flip the switch and just have Charlotte come out to face Asuka, I'm okay with an Asuka Charlotte match. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's the best, much more than Lacey Evans and Asuka. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oodles above all of that. I need to harp on this a little more, and I'm just going to circle back to this. It's wild to me that Asuka is such a background player, not only because she's the current Raw Women's Champion, which is wild to me, but because of how quintessential she was to the company in 2020 during the COVID era, the closed doors era, along with Sasha and Bayley. I thought those three women made WWE, dare I say, must watch, or at least made it interesting throughout the entire year, because they were carrying the whole thing. They were carrying the whole show. It's weird that Charlotte comes back and now suddenly they're going to focus on Ric Flair fooling around with Lacey Evans, and Asuka's just going to be standing in the background of all of this. I don't get it. I really don't.
And like, again, extrapolating out, what's the WrestleMania match for Asuka? If we assume it is indeed Sasha Banks against Bianca Belair, like, what's the WrestleMania match? Charlotte? Maybe? Like, the biggest one they could do, and the one that would probably make most sense given how she stepped away before when she announced her pregnancy, would be Becky Lynch against Asuka. Becky coming back to win the belt against the person she vacated it to. Like, that would be a story that makes sense. But like, Becky is, 2 months removed from having a child? Does she want to come back that quick into a WrestleMania match and take bumps? I wouldn't, but I'm not her. But like, that's, if I were them and I was looking at like our available women and how I've put them together at the moment and what makes sense, I think Becky and Asuka would be the match I'd build toward. But then Asuka, as you said, is just a complete afterthought in this show. She's been just Charlotte's pal for 2 months.
And like, really, like her, almost like her valet. To the point, like it's not, you know, the promo times that she, look, the only time we saw Asuka all alone, like herself, is when she was fighting the Fiendess.
Oh, that's gonna be the WrestleMania match, isn't it? Oh no! Why do you have to bring up Alexa Bliss?
That's where I was leaning towards. You know, clearly. You know, Alexa Bliss, when she puts on the black t-shirt and the black lipstick and, you know, transitions her ponytails into those buns things, she becomes invincible. Asuka couldn't put her down.
Oh, you've upset me so much. Because I'm like, is it going to be Asuka and Becky Lynch? Is it going to be Asuka and Charlotte? I'm bored of Charlotte, but they'd have a good match. No, you're like, no, it's going to be Alexa Bliss, and you're right. It's probably going to be Alexa Bliss.
Are they?
No.
Look, okay, let me try and wipe that away. And by the way, folks, let us know in the chat who you think is going to win here. I want to say hello to Joe Cook, who popped in. Good to see you, Joe. Let me try and wash this away. There's still Rhea Ripley in the background of all of this as well.
She has been on TV since the Rumble, has she?
She has not.
Right.
So yeah, maybe well, you know, I'm kind of thinking that, you know, these Elimination Chamber plans are so, you know, they're taking up all of the brain space in WWE, right? So maybe they're like, oh, we don't know how to insert Rhea Ripley into all of this, you know. You wouldn't want to start giving her squash matches or stuff like that just to build her back up, because she's due for a redemption run, I think. Maybe that could also be in the wings for WrestleMania, but then again I think your WrestleMania match here, this is Rhea Ripley and Charlotte again. Especially with Lacey Evans out of the picture now. Like, Lacey and Charlotte was probably the WrestleMania match. If I'm looking at reshuffling that now, you would do the Rhea finally beat Charlotte match. God, that NXT run really killed her, didn't it? It really did. And it's such a shame. So, I mean, it's a hard one to call. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. You know, people are dropping ideas in the chat as to who might be Lacey's replacement. You know, I even saw people saying, "Oh, Tessa Blanchard's going to show up." And I'm like, what?
No.
I don't understand why. I understand because Tessa she's a star. It's fine, but
Taya's NXT bound, isn't she?
Yes, she is. Yes.
Which, if she was main roster bound, wouldn't be the worst place to throw her here. But if she's NXT bound, I guess not.
Look, I mean, they might swerve, right? They might. They were talking about her being sent to NXT, but and frankly, I hope she does, because I think she's going to thrive there much more than on main for now, anyway. Because there's a lot more interesting combinations over there, but yeah, we'll you know, it's just funny because every time there's like mention of a surprise appearance, like Tessa, why? No,
it's like, no, it's not going to be Tessa. It's never going to be Tessa. Sorry.
No. Let's move on to the United States Championship triple threat match. Bobby Lashley versus Keith Lee versus Matt Riddle. It's for the title. Matt Riddle has been consistently losing to Bobby Lashley, yet here he is. And we threw Keith Lee, who hopefully has learned some wrestling after going back to the Performance Center. I hope he's upped his game. Hope he's back on. I hope he's on a presentable track. I hope so.
Hopefully he knows where the hard camera is. Am I right?
Exactly. You got
That's what they teach down there.
Look, I want your thoughts on all of this. I personally, and I've talked about this multiple times on the show, you know, Raw, and I feel sometimes we lose the minimal bright spots that exist on Raw, because Raw is such a slog these days.
It's the worst. It's so bad. Because in the build up to doing this episode of your wonderful podcast or vodcast YouTube show, you're a YouTube wrestling gamer. I've watched more.
It's fair. It's fair.
I watched more WWE television than I've watched in quite a while, and God, the difference between Raw and SmackDown. Like, I don't think SmackDown's a great show, but it's so much more watchable than Raw is. Raw is just borderline unbearable.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree. SmackDown is such a better show, but one of the bright lights in this is Bobby Lashley and the way he's been booked. And like I said, I've talked about this multiple times. I don't think, outside of Drew McIntyre, I don't think there is anyone who is more properly booked as a dominant guy, a credible dominant persona wrestler as Bobby Lashley is right now. I think on the mid card he's untouchable, and he has a super protected finisher. He hasn't been pinned in a match for a long time, even though it has happened that they've lost tag team matches. He's been DQ'd, but he hasn't had his shoulders put to the mat in such a long time. I think they're doing fantastic work with Lashley. It was to the point, Garrett, that I thought at the Royal Rumble, my prediction was they were going to have a match earlier in the evening where he was going to drop the mid-card title, and they were going to give him Drew's performance from last year to really establish him as a huge main event caliber, deadly threat to Drew McIntyre type character and lead us into WrestleMania with that. And I thought it was going to work.
He's the most protected actor in the company. It's very, like, it's so annoying to me, because, like, when they brought him back, he was doing, like, the pointing at his butt stuff. He was doing the Sami Zayn sister feud. Remember that? And it's like, there are a few people on your roster that you look at and they are credible badasses. There's, like, Brock Lesnar, and there's Bobby Lashley. Mm-hmm. There's probably like two that, just like looking at them, it's like, that dude could kick my ass. And then especially when you know his amateur and MMA credentials, even though he's only ever beaten like nerds in MMA, but still, it counts. But like there's a point, like Bobby Lashley was.
That's what all the bullies at my school would say about me. It's like, well, you still count. Punch.
He's a nerd, but I beat him up, so it counts.
There you go.
Because like Lashley was always a guy who like never really like filled those shoes as a performer until like weird like 2014 TNA. He just showed up, he won the belt, and he finally like owned that role as just a badass who kills people. And it was under MVP's guidance, so it's like they carried that story forward. That it's weird that there is tendrils going back to 2014 TNA storytelling on WWE television these days. But I guess that's nothing new. We just had LA Knight, as I did the hand movement, debut on NXT. It doesn't work as well, by the way. Eli Drake flows better, but like you know, what can you do? What can you do? But yeah, Bobby Lashley stepped into his own. He had those killer matches with like Bobby Roode and Jeff Hardy and Austin Aries during that summer period. And then he just went on to just be this like super great dominant force in TNA for the next like 3 years. And then they brought him back and he was doing the pointing at the butt stuff and like all that. And I'm like, no, why couldn't you have started with this? Like brought him in as just this dude who just kills people. And like for me, there was that period in 2014 where Bobby Lashley against Brock Lesnar was like a legitimate dream match.
Sure.
Like two like dudes with like serious amateur credentials, two dudes that just passed the eye test of like look at them, just look at them. And then they did all that stuff with Lashley that's just not very good. But as you said, they've heated him up, they protected him. The dude just wins, he beats everybody. So like maybe they do Brock. Like if Brock is doing Mania, sure, Lashley, why not?
I mean, look, there's so much I want to touch on what you've said, you know. But just to your immediate point, they have to do Lashley and Brock. It's something that has been teased at and desired for years. Look, I still maintain that this year you should pull the trigger. Like, of course, if Becky comes back from being a mother, you should pull the trigger and put the 4 horsewomen in the main event and have a 4 horsewomen main event this year. Because I don't think there will be a point in history after this where all 4 of them are going to be as hot as they are now. And they're all in their prime. And I think the more you wait, you're going to miss an opportunity. And WWE is fantastic at missing opportunities like that because we never got a Shield members triple threat at WrestleMania. Like
Sting and The Undertaker.
Like WWE is very, very good at messing up these opportunities. And they have one here. And I think it should happen. I mean, Vince... I can't imagine Vince McMahon not being behind Bobby Lashley. Christ, Lashley was the guy he was involved in the Donald Trump match years ago. So Vince likes Bobby Lashley, right?
Until he left and betrayed him.
Okay. But still, you know, I mean, Vince likes to say, you know, it's it'll always be home for you. And, you know, like he told Jim Cornette when Cornette showed up at the Hall of Fame, is like, welcome home. And Cornette was like, well, thank you, Vince, but, you know, it's not home anymore.
He brought Jeff Jarrett back after Jeff Jarrett held him up for ransom to drop the IC title. So
good point. I mean, you know, there's been weirder stuff. Anyway, this is the year that has to happen. Look, if you're a Matt Riddle fan these days, I find it must be extremely difficult to be a Matt Riddle fan because I think, you know, he's been losing right and left. He's treated like he's all over the place. I think his backstage promos are obnoxious. I don't even think
the comedy is dreadful.
Right?
It's so bad. Like, it's not even like, oh, that's funny. It's just like, oh no, why are we doing this?
And we are so far away now from Keith Lee walking into the Royal Rumble and having Brock Lesnar become white as a sheet and go like, oh, this is a big boy. We're so far from that now. Like, he's just another guy, right? What are the mechanics of this match, man? What's going to happen here?
Like, if you're not doing Brock for Lashley, I'd have Lashley pin Riddle again, because who cares? And Keith Lee and Lashley's the WrestleMania match. And like if you're going to protect Lashley, at least, you know, make that worthwhile. And the person who beats him should be meaningful. And I think Keith Lee beating him would be meaningful.
Right. What I find suspicious here, as the kids say these days.
Very trendy.
I know, hashtags and all that stuff. the fact that it's a triple threat is very, very, very telling to me.
Oh, they're gonna have Keith Lee beat Matt Riddle, aren't they? Ah, no! Why do you ruin everything for me, Warren? Why do you do this to me?
Well, quid pro quo, buddy. You do that to me with all your tweets, and I'm like, he's right again. Fuck this guy.
Just bringing each other down by pointing out that
but
the match is expressly designed for Lashley. But like maybe Lashley is dropping the belt without being pinned, so he can go on and face Brock Lesnar. Sure, why not?
This is what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing. This is why I think they set up the triple threat so that Lashley can drop the title without losing. He's super. I don't think there's outside of Drew. I don't think there's anyone as protected as he is in the company. Roman. And that's it.
And like, no, they don't protect mid-carders. It's just the thing they don't do. Like, they might protect their champions. Sometimes they don't even do that. They just have them beaten like drums. But like, they do not protect mid-carders, and they protected Bobby Lashley
like crazy. And man, oh man, have you ever seen a full Nelson, take out people so quickly? It's crazy. So my prediction here is that Keith Lee's going to walk out with the belt. He's going to pin Matt Riddle because Matt Riddle's he's a loser at this point. That's my prediction. And Bobby Lashley moves on to bigger.
That's exactly things. When they always put belts on people, though. It's like Matt Riddle will walk out of this match and people are like, "Look, he's a champion." It's like he spent the last 3 months being a comedy goof that loses.
Not entirely wrong. That's what they're doing with Apollo Crews on SmackDown, right?
Oh, into his 7th reboot as well. Like, poor Apollo, he's a super talented dude who they just cannot find who he's meant to be, and they do keep trying, kind of, but then they keep giving up on him, and it's just a sad state of affairs. I assume that match isn't good. Might that match be added? Apollo against Biggie. He kind of killed him with steps. Well, it would be weird.
Biggie, was he stretchered? He did a stretcher job, so you'd assume that he's not going to be back on Monday, Sunday, excuse me, because goddamn, you have to sell a stretcher job, right? But then again, you remember the beating Sasha Banks took from Bayley on SmackDown when Bayley finally turned on her?
Yeah.
The beating lasted 3 segments. And a week later, she was back on camera. I'm like, this is not how you sell injuries. It's so stupid.
So, do we think this is going to be a 5-match card? I assume they're going to add something, right? Or 6-match cards because of the Asuka match, if they keep that.
I feel like that there's one more match they need to add. I feel like, unless the Elimination Chambers are not hour matches. It's not like the Royal Rumble where there's 2 Rumble matches, and then there's a couple on the mid card because you have 2 matches that last 2 hours. Elimination Chamber matches aren't hour matches. I don't know.
Yeah, they're like 30 minutes. So maybe SmackDown tag titles, Rude and Ziggler against Street Profits. Maybe they were teasing that on TV, but it never really went anywhere.
Sure.
You sound so enthusiastic.
I mean, like I said at the start of the show, right? This is the kind of pape that if WWE was actually asking people for money, this would be completely unacceptable. Like, no one in the company would be like, yeah, we're fine announcing matches 3 days before, we're running this. It can't go, like, they already have our money, so they're like, all right, let's just wing it. It's infuriating to me sometimes when I think about that kind of stuff. So let's talk about
Bobby Roode having matching gear amuses me to no end for some reason. It just doesn't work. They're not the same person. So the fact that they're wearing similar gear, it's like more Dolph gear than it is Roode gear. So like Roode wearing Dolph style gear is just very strange.
And they call themselves the Dirty Dogs now, dogs with a W, and you've seen the logo. You know that Dolph came up with all of this, right? It's
a throwback to the Dirty Heels in TNA, Austin Aries and Bobby Roode's team. That's where I'm sure that's where the Dirty came from.
Oh, so okay. Well, you just broke my perception there, because I was like, it feels like a completely, like a Dolph Ziggler thing, Dirty Dogs, and the the kind of the throwback type of glam rock type of logo, and it kind of feels like a whole Dolph thing. But yeah, okay, that's interesting. Let's talk about the Elimination Chamber matches. First of all, why aren't we getting a women's Elimination Chamber match this year, Garrett? Explain this to me.
We had that very important Lacey Evans against Asuka story that had to pay off in the show, and we couldn't do it in the chamber. And I don't know what, because they didn't want to commit to one. It's really that simple.
I mean, why would
That's it? Yeah, there you go.
I mean, you look at what you're doing, what you end up doing with Asuka, right? It's like, you could have had Asuka defend in the chamber. You really could
Charlotte,
have.
Lacey,
and
some other people.
Yeah.
Throw Billie Kay in there. She tries to be friends with everybody in there. It's like, hey, will you be my partner? No. And then she gets betrayed like 4 separate times. Yeah, you could do that. That would work.
It's weird. It's just really strange. But this is where we're at. We have an Elimination Chamber match from the SmackDown side. Kevin Owens, Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn, and the King, Baron Corbin. And the winner of this match gets to fight Roman Reigns a little later on in the evening. I think it's safe to say that between both compositions, I don't want to do a sweeping statement. I'm going to take it on me. For me, this is the most compelling of the two Elimination Chamber matches that we have, as far as just because of the people who are in here. Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens, Jey Uso, Sami, Cesaro. It's going to be fantastic. I'm actually looking forward to it.
I noticed you didn't mention King Corbin. It's actually really weird that like the two chamber matches are very indicative of two different eras of WWE. Like you get the other one, which is very much a 2009. AJ's obviously in there too, but the rest of them, like Drew, Hardy, Orton, Sheamus, Kofi, are a group of people that could have been in an Elimination Chamber in 2009. They probably were in an Elimination Chamber.
They probably were.
2009. And then you get like the newer generation of like the kind of the same guys in relatively the same spot, but you get Uso, Owens, Corbin, Zayn, Cesaro, and Daniel Bryan. I do find that interesting. Just like you get, it's reflective of two different. And one of like in 10 years we'll have the same thing. We'll have the Uso, Owens, Corbin, Zayn, Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, old guys match, even though not the youngest bunch themselves.
Not necessarily, no.
I can't pick a winner here. I'm trying to think of like Jey Uso, sure, but like no. Kevin Owens, you're gonna beat Kevin Owens again? Probably not. Corbin, nobody wants that. Like Sami's not a credible challenger for Roman. Cesaro, maybe. And like I don't want them to do Daniel Bryan against Roman Reigns under this pretense. No. Like under him being so like Cesaro probably is the guy I'd want to win, but not really. I don't know. It's a weird one.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one to call. But look, I think we're putting a little too much thought into it. Because I do think they're going to go with Kevin Owens again.
Oh, they're not, are they?
Sorry, Garrett.
But like they just beat him like a drum. He just keeps getting beaten. They can't beat him again. And fair enough, in order for him not to be beaten again by Roman Reigns, he would have to be beaten again in this match. So he's beaten regardless.
You know what would make it this is what would make it less painful, in my opinion, is if Kevin Owens then, during the course between pay-per-views, if they actually gave him matches where he could just beat a guy.
Yeah.
Because now all we remember is the last loss, and I don't think he's fought anyone since Royal Rumble. I could be mistaken. And I think before that, like he had defeated Jey Uso.
Yeah, he was in the tag last night on SmackDown.
He wasn't, but like actually giving him singles matches.
Yeah, where that's like this guy can beat people because he's a good wrestler.
Because there's a little concept called getting your heat back, right? Mm-hmm. And just moving from big match to big match to big match and losing them. What are we going to remember? It's exactly like Samoa Joe in WWE. Samoa Joe got the big matches, could never get the job done.
Braun Strowman. That was
Braun
Braun's
Strowman.
entire gimmick. He just kept on losing the big one until he won the big one when nobody cared.
But exactly when the ship had sailed, like
long since.
But the way they've been approaching Kevin Owens over the past few months is he doesn't give up. He takes a beating, keeps on ticking kind of thing. I think this is what they're going to do it. And it matches in the persona that he has right now, where he's going to be like, where he's going to take a whooping in the Elimination Chamber, and he's going to come down to the ring for his match with Roman, limping, holding his ribs, and then he's going to take a beating from Roman, but Roman's going to have to do everything in his power to try and put him away again.
Again, though, that's the problem. They've done this match through what they did, the cage match. They did what was it, TLC? They had their first match, and then they did it again with the Last Man Standing at the Rumble, and they just they can't do it a fourth time. They just can't. And
they can't have Roman lose.
No,
you can't.
Which is the reason I think Cesaro is the easiest. He's a guy who has just about the right amount of credibility that he can lose. Like if this was for a fast lane match, I'd say Daniel Bryan. Sure, just do it. Like do a month's build to Bryan and Reigns. Why not? But the same night is what throws me so far off that it just do Cesaro. Who cares?
I can get behind the Cesaro thing because I also think he's been in the midst of a little push as well, right?
And Seth Rollins is his WrestleMania match, you would think, unless they blow that off at Fastlane.
And why would you really?
Yeah. So if you want them for a big Seth Rollins WrestleMania match, give him an Elimination Chamber win. Fair enough, he'd have to lose to Roman after, but at least it would give him something. And
he can lose to Roman after being in the Elimination Chamber, so you still have that to hang on to. It would be a surprise win. People like surprises. People like Cesaro. You want to get the internet wrestling community all excited about a WWE thing. Put Cesaro in a big time match. That'll get some talking points going. And, there's nothing that says that Seth Rollins can't interfere on Sunday as well.
Yeah, Cesaro's 40. It's now or never.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's time to pull the trigger, right?
It was time to pull the trigger 6 years ago when he had that great match against John Cena on Raw for the Open Challenge. That was the moment. It's all right, commit to this, dude. It's we're 6 years later now. Do it finally. Come on.
Plus his logo, his what he's developed for himself. It's so good.
It's very sleek. It's very un-WWE. It's far too sleek for their t-shirts.
The big bold letters, dare I say, a very Swiss type of bold approach, It's like, hey, this is the time to do it. He's got the merch to back it on top of that. It's very good. So, yeah, I could get behind it. I still think Kevin Owens is going to win the Elimination Chamber match, but is going to lose to Roman Reigns. I think that's a given that whoever wins loses against Reigns, right?
They're hardly gonna do Bryan beats him, loses the belt back next month. That would be just ridiculous. Which means they'll probably do it. But yeah, whoever, it's just setting up to lose to Reigns, and Reigns gets more heat from beating people slightly cheaply. Reigns is a weird guy where he's beating people and being protected, but he's beating everybody slightly cheaply. But it's the right kind of slightly cheaply.
Yeah. It's like. It's like a Jay White Gato kind of way to beat people, It's like more recent, maybe not like Jay White circa 2018 where you're like, Jesus, this is annoying, But nowadays, the 2020 Jay White that we got, where he's sometimes he still has to call upon his boy Gato to get the job done, but it's not as blatant or as ridiculous as a couple of years ago. I want to say hello to Tom Collihu, who's in the chat. Good to see you. Welcome. So, and just before we move on from this match, I just want to get your thoughts. Because I'm also wondering what is Roman's WrestleMania match, right?
It's Edge.
Yeah, it's Edge.
Yeah.
Let's say out of the blue, they decide to not go with that, and they're like, we're going to swerve y'all. You're getting Edge and Finn Balor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which, by the way, the whole framing on SmackDown, by the way, was like Edge has 13 potential challengers, which is like the 6 guys in the Raw chamber, the 6 guys in the SmackDown chamber, and Roman Reigns, leaving out poor Finn Balor. He has 14 potential challengers.
He does have 14. Good. Thank you for the math on that, Garrett. I'm horrible at it. So
the numbers don't lie, Warren, and they spell disaster for Roman Reigns at WrestleMania or Edge, whatever.
If they wanted to just swerve us and give us something completely else, I kind of feel like in the context, a Roman Reigns Daniel Bryan match would be a big time one. Like, I'd be interested, very, very interested in watching Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan in their current roles have a big time championship match.
For me, that would win the WrestleMania match for me. Like, right? I would have like Bryan's my Rumble winner, Bryan Reigns. There you go. It's like, why not? Because like you can do Drew and Edge. Because like Drew doesn't have a challenger. That's Drew's problem. Like who's Drew facing? Who knows? If it's Sheamus for WrestleMania, that's okay. You know, that's not a WrestleMania match. No offense to Sheamus, my fellow Irishman. I will not disrespect him that much. But it's not a WrestleMania match.
Right.
So like maybe the best thing to do is just throw Edge Drew's way and do Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns.
But, you know, like 2 strong baby faces, Drew, Edge. I'm still very torn on it. But after last night, it really does feel like it's that Roman Reigns is getting Edge.
Like the 2 Elimination Chamber matches have been like the Raw one has predominantly been built around The Miz, which, Lord, why are we still doing this? And the SmackDown one has been predominantly built around Roman Reigns against Edge, really. So I think they're foregone conclusions in some ways.
Yeah.
Miz. Drew and Miz is going to be the main event. Get out of here. No, Drew and Bad Bunny is going to be the WrestleMania match. They really want something that'll draw.
Well, let's talk about Drew and the rest of his crew in the Elimination Chamber on the Raw side as he defends his WWE Championship against Jeff Hardy, Randy Orton, AJ Styles, Kofi Kingston, and Sheamus. Now, Sheamus on Monday won the opportunity to come in last in the chamber. Randy Orton proved to us that he can get completely confounded and befuddled by technology to the point where he gets counted out during the match.
So many fiendesses would do that to anybody. I think that's fair.
Can I just say, since you brought it up this time,
okay,
give Alexa a mask at the very least. Give her a mask too, because honestly, like the Hot Topic look ain't doing it for me to get me to suddenly be like, oh, now she can't be beat by anyone. At least give her a fucking mask. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
We have a very important update in chat, Warren. Biggie injury update. He has suffered a brachial plexus injury that has resulted in temporary arm weakness. He's currently convalescing at home.
Where is the brachial plexus? I am legitimately looking this up right now.
Where did he drop those steel steps on this man?
The brachial plexus is a network of nerves formed by the anterior rami of the lower 4 cervical nerves and the first thoracic nerve. This plexus extends from the spinal cord through the cervical axillary canal in the neck, over the first rib, and into the armpit. So literally, he could have been hurt just about anywhere on his torso. It supplies, this is what it does, Garrett. It supplies afferent and efferent nerve fibers to the chest, shoulder, arm, forearm, and hand. So he was hurt to a series of nerves.
Well, maybe, you see what happened, he dropped the steps, right? So maybe it wasn't actually the side of the steps, but it was the point of the steps that like drove right into a thing, and it's now he has numbness and he can't move his arm.
And thankfully, all he has to do is convalesce at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's
very important. He can convalesce. You know, that was it. Sami Zayn Biggie and Apollo Crews IC title match in the build. That was a good match. Remember that?
Yeah, it was actually.
Like 3 weeks ago on SmackDown, they had a good match.
Yeah, does someone like in WWE tell one of the writers, okay, give us a list of all the things that a wrestler, that someone can get injured on, but
they spin a wheel. They just spin a wheel.
And it's like, but all injuries that aren't severe, like not an ACL tear, not like a broken femur or something like that. Is no, all these like these weird parts. Oh wow, but brachial plexus. That sounds serious. Let's use that.
But like, why not give somebody an injury people can understand? Why not be like, Big E has bruised ribs, cannot compete. There you go.
Just as simple as that. Or like a hairline fracture on the ribs. Not a big deal, A hairline fracture fucking hurts nonetheless, Not a big deal. It does have to. Oh, listen. Anyway. I love this. That's the kind of thing that makes WWE so special to me. He
learned about this injury in his medical facility.
Yes, in his medical facility, being looked after by medical personnel,
where he spent time refusing treatment because it's what everybody does in WWE. They deny doctors from looking at them being hurt. Apparently.
Hey, that's what the alpha males do. They don't want help walking back, even though they're stumbling.
Stretchers.
Yes, get it. They roll.
If Kyle got off that stretcher on NXT, we would have had much fewer issues.
And now I look at Kyle O'Reilly and I'm like, what a beta.
Yeah. Twitter wouldn't have freaked out if he was a man.
Yeah, if he had walked away. Vince was right all along. Tell me about the men's elimination chamber. We talked about it a bit. It does feel like a 2009 composition here. What are your thoughts on this?
It's hard to get excited about this group of people, but this group of people are all very good pro wrestlers.
Yes.
All of them. Maybe not all in their prime anymore. I'm looking at you, AJ. AJ not being in his prime anymore makes me so sad because he's like my favorite wrestler of all time, and he's just not the same, and it's so sad to me. But it's life. People get old. But like, I think Jeff will do something really stupid, which is great. Mm-hmm. Kofi will do something really cool, which I'm kind of sick of, but it'll be cool.
Sure.
I think it'll be a good match. I think they'll have a good match. And isn't that all we can actually, Drew and Jeff on Raw, that segment of the Gauntlet match was really good.
I really liked it. And you actually brought it up that it harkened back to their TNA championship match.
Oh, they did a cool spot in that match where Drew was on steps and Jeff did a swanton off the top while Drew was on steps on the floor. And then Drew got his knees up and Jeff just died.
Oh!
That's the way Jeff Hardy's life works. He's like, what's the stupidest thing I can do in this throwaway TV title match? But
yeah, right. Exactly. The number of times you're like, Jeff, you don't have to kill yourself on this throwaway match. He did it. He did some insane bumps on a match with Elias like about a month ago with Elias. I'm like, Jeff, stop.
It feels like they're not getting nearly enough out of Jeff, doesn't it? Because like they shouldn't be like they really shouldn't be pushing. Like he shouldn't be a champion. But like he's a dude who guys like Keith Lee should be feuding with and beating on a regular basis, or maybe whoever the heel equivalent of Keith Lee is these days. I don't even know on Raw. Cedric Alexander. I don't know.
Braun.
Oh God, no! Don't give me Braun.
Braun with his shirt.
But like Jeff Hardy is a guy, one of the few people in this company who's like still like a legitimate star, and it was always funny in the year where there were still crowds. Like Jeff Hardy is one of those guys who, like, no matter where they are, would always get a pop.
Yeah.
People like Jeff Hardy. He's a star, and he should be working with these next generation guys and losing to them. And he's just kind of like having feuds with Elias. Why is he feuding with Elias?
If anything, he shouldn't. But look, the same can be said with Rey Mysterio at the same time. Where Rey's been completely lost in a shuffle of what exactly are we doing with you? Like outside the silly eye-poking stuff, he had some really good matches with Seth. And that's kind of what you expect from a legend of the caliber of a guy like Rey Mysterio being put up with a top guy in the company, and they're just having great matches together. He's losing. That's fine. He's on the tail end of his career. Seth still has some gas. Why not add a couple of notches to your belt after that, right? Jeff feuding with Elias, yeah, I guess, but it doesn't. It like you said, there's much more they could be getting out of him than just like go out there, Jeff, and with to the old Hardy Boy music, and people will feel good to see you because they remember you from back then, kind of thing. It's strange. It's very, very strange. I completely agree with this. But like you said,
I love the Mysterios, by the way. I love them. I think they're one of the most fun teams in this company, and they've done nothing with them since the end of the Buddy and Seth stuff. Like, they should be having matches with Rude and Ziggler. They should be having matches with the Street Profits. They're sadly having matches with Otis and Gable. Though Gable Gable do some cool stuff with Dominic Mysterio. Like, I love those two. I think the Mysterios are one of the most fun acts in the company, and that's what Ray could be doing. Because, like, Dominic, in theory, he's the Hook of WWE.
Oh boy, you've just triggered a bunch of people here.
Hook against Dominic Mysterio is my dream match in wrestling right now. Actually, no, add in Brock Anderson, Aaron's son. There you go. That's a WrestleMania or an AEW All Out main event someday, one or the other. But like, Ray and Dominic are such a fun team, and they're not doing anything. I know they had COVID in December or something, didn't they? I remember they reported that, so they were out for a little while. But God, do something with those two. They're fun.
And I mean, if they're gonna, you're right. Like, I personally think they're all over the place, and it's it's not compelling to me. But if you want to use Mysterio to get his son over, sure, why not? Like, if they're going to invest into this kid, and there's was Dominic Mysterio ready for for the big roles that he was tossed into? Arguable.
Yes.
Arguable.
Firm, yes. Big Dominic Mysterio stan.
I can tell, but there's nothing there is nothing but good that will come for this guy for being in the ring wrestling guys like Seth Rollins, like he did. That's the kind of on-the-job training, for lack of a better word, that you just can't get by lifting weights and doing crunches at the PC. You're wrestling one of the top guys in the company, a guy who's a sure hand who can guide you through matches. Are you kidding me? Like, that kind of on the spot experience, that's priceless, and that's how you evolve as a wrestler. That's how you improve. There's nothing wrong with that type of approach.
And he's one of the few actually young people on this roster.
True.
Like,
true.
All these guys, all the Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, like, they were the best wrestlers in the world when this company signed them. They don't need to be developed. They're there. They're ready. Let them go. Whereas Dominic Mysterio is a young man in his early 20s who, as you said, like, look at John Cena's development as a wrestler, who was a guy who was very green, but he was constantly put in the ring with the likes of Kurt Angle, the likes of Brock Lesnar, the likes of The Undertaker, the likes of Eddie Guerrero. And that's how he became really, really good, because he constantly worked with really, really good wrestlers. Which is the reason you should be putting people in the ring with Jeff Hardy and putting people in the ring with Rey Mysterio as much as you can, especially like the relatively inexperienced ones, which this WWE roster is so weird that there's actually not that many relatively inexperienced, because that's, they've recruited so heavily that you get Keith Lee, who's like a 10-year pro, you get Matt Riddle, who's a prodigy, you get Sami Zayn, Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens. Looking at the people on this show right in front of me, all of whom are like just the finished product. And there's actually, it's so weird to watch WWE TV, and I think it's kind of the problem. Not to invoke the killer AEW word, but that AEW has those guys underneath, the Lee Johnsons of the world, who have places to go. And I think like Dominic Mysterio is the only person on WWE television who's quite similar. And that's who we need more people like that, who can go like from like Edge being introduced as a nobody, as part of the Brood, who's a guy who loses, goes to become a successful tag team guy, successful mid-card guy, successful main eventer. Like, we don't have that like pipeline anymore in this company, and we need it.
That's a fantastic observation. You're absolutely right. I completely agree with it. So who does Drew hang on to his title, or do we get a swerve here?
If anybody's winning that's not Drew, it's probably Sheamus. Again, it's so weird because like Drew just doesn't have a WrestleMania match.
Yeah,
like
he doesn't.
There's not even one that you're like, oh well, maybe this, and like Lashley, maybe they might do Lashley Drew. I don't know. Like,
I still think there's money in Lashley Drew. I really do. You dropped the mid card title.
Their match last year kicked ass, and they ruined it with the Lana bullshit.
Yeah, they did. Absolutely. Last year, and again, I'm on record in saying this, they should not have pulled the trigger on McIntyre Lashley last year as soon as they did. They should have built that shit, because Drew would have been a legitimately a credible contender even back then, even with the Lana bullshit. I think he would have been a credible opponent. And now on top of that, with the Hurt business and everything that they've done with him in the past 9 months, he's an heir apparent. Let's put it that way. If Drew hadn't lost the title briefly at the end of last summer, I think there would have been a case for him to drop it here. But man, I don't know. I don't feel like he's gonna lose tonight. But again, I still don't see his WrestleMania match. I'm having trouble. It's not clear to me. Because Randy Orton, you can't go back to the Randy Orton well. Everyone's sick of that. Besides,
Randy has the Fiend. Yeah, that's he has surely a mania match.
I think Sheamus is a good fast lane opponent for Drew, and the three other
AJ?
guys. AJ feels so mid card now.
He does,
but he's a guy. He's one of these rare guys where WWE could just like turn the switch back on. And he's like, okay, he's
AJ Styles. He's just AJ Styles. Yeah,
it's a weird one.
I want it to be Lashley now, because obviously that was the main event of Slammiversary 2016, Lashley against Drew Galloway, and I think that would be the first time that a TNA pay-per-view main event would go on to main event WrestleMania. So
you'd have a field day with that.
I would subtweet the living hell out of it.
Oh my god. Does the Miz cash in?
Oh god, third goddamn month in a row. The third pay-per-view in a row that is built entirely, like not entirely, but predominantly around will the Miz cash in. Like that was the big hook at TLC, in which he did cash in and he was just given his damn case back.
Correct.
That was the hook for the Rumble. Like the hook for Goldberg against Drew McIntyre was will the Miz cash in. What are you doing? He didn't. And now we're here again. Will the Miz cash in on Drew McIntyre? Probably. He'll probably lose again and they'll give it back to him again, because why not? Nothing matters. Maybe Miz is Drew's fast lane opponent, and then they do Sheamus at WrestleMania, which again, Sheamus Drew, it's not a WrestleMania match, but maybe that's how they stretch that out.
Could be. There's a few things that I feel like WWE fans, wrestling fans, there's a few things in the history of WWE that I feel like people really, really care about unironically, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think Undertaker's streak was one of those.
The Royal Rumble.
And the Money in the Bank briefcase. I really do believe that people that people really, really enjoy the idea of this sort of Damocles just hanging around and being like, because of the unpredictability, because of the excitement about it. But I feel like this year it's been a complete disaster and there's no way to really get invested in it. Going from the Otis experiment to Miz losing it, to Miz getting it back. It's like, I know in the minds of WWE, wins and losses don't matter, but these types of things, these storyline elements, they do matter, because that's how you get invested. That's why you care about someone climbing a ladder to grab a briefcase, and and if you don't make it matter, if the company doesn't care about it, then why should you?
Yeah, like then the Jomo's just there. Jomo, look, what a weird return to WWE Jomo has had, right?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Or he's like, He was a Lucha Underground headliner, carried that brand.
Mm-hmm.
He was Impact World Champion, like lost that belt a few months before he left Impact and went back to WWE. And then he's done nothing, like literally nothing. Because like when he came back and was thrown out of the Rumble like unceremoniously by Brock, you're like, oh, okay, they just hired him because he was available, fine. But it's weird.
It's very strange. I feel confident that he's happy in whatever he's doing.
Oh yeah,
right
take the
now.
money, all power to him. At this, especially at this stage, it's like he's probably on a very comfortable salary to do nothing, and all power to him.
And no, there's no travel. Everyone's
His wife was just hired, so like happy out.
He's super glad for sure. You know what I was thinking about the Miz? Something that I would have liked to have seen on Monday when he recused himself from the Elimination Chamber. I was like, you know what he should do? Yeah, Drew goes through the gauntlet match on Monday as prescribed, and Drew wins it just like he did, but he's dead on his feet. He's completely exhausted. Miz cashes in on Monday. He cashes in successfully, and he wins the title. So we go into Elimination Chamber, and Miz, smartest guy in the room for once, is like, I don't have to defend it in Elimination Chamber because I removed myself from the match. Now, so then the Elimination Chamber match becomes a number one contenders match, you know?
I don't think anybody in WWE is allowed to be that smart.
And imagine, like, the entire week, that's all people would have talked about. How good of a swerve it would have been. How smartly Miz would have been booked here. Instead of him removing himself from the match, then fighting later on Kofi Kingston so that John Morrison could get a spot, and then losing. Like, he's booked like a goof.
Yes. Which is the problem. Like the entire time he's been dangling this case over, which again has been for the last 3 pay-per-views that he's been thoroughly dangling this thing over all of these matches.
Mm-hmm.
He's just been a nerd. And the match is Damian Priest and Bad Bunny against Miz and Morrison at Mania, one would presume. So like he's still going to be a nerd. He's in the celebrity match to be a goofball for Bad Bunny. Like who cares?
And that's the point. And who cares? It'll be what it is. And that just let's move on from the Money in the Bank briefcase at this point. Let's just not move on, like not do it anymore. Let's just.
I'm on the side of not do it anymore.
Really?
Because I think they have done every possible permutation of cash-ins that they can possibly do. Like I disagree. All of them.
They haven't done a tag team.
Oh God, no! I don't want to do a tag team.
And this is why I thought it was so interesting when Otis won it, because Otis was such a nice guy that I thought he was going to turn around to his partner and be like, "Dude, we're going to cash in on the tag champs. You and I want it for us," kind of thing. And I was looking forward to that. I was like, if they go down this route, I think it's a good idea. It's a little fresher. It's good. I still think there's room for that. A tag team guy winning the title and then cashing in for the tag team. But then again, the only problem is that you need WWE to care about his tag team division. That's the only thing.
Like my biggest problem is like Edge, Rob Van Dam, CM Punk, Jack Swagger, The Miz, Alberto Del Rio, Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose. What do they all have in common?
Did you just run those off from memory? But what do they all have in common? Most of them are not in the company anymore. Is that it?
They all won their first world championship by cashing in Money in the Bank.
Okay.
All of them. Edge, Rob Van Dam, CM Punk, Jack Swagger, The Miz, Alberto Del Rio, Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose. In theory, that's the future of the company, all of them right there. And they all won their first world title with the slip on the banana peel Money in the Bank cash-in. And I think that's like a real problem. That like their first title win is not these big, emotional, triumphant culminations of really satisfying story arcs. It's, the shock. Which the shock was good. Like when Edge cashed in on John Cena, that ruled. When Dolph Ziggler cashed in on Alberto Del Rio, that ruled. Like it's not like the shock is not like a thing that is inherently bad. But when everybody wins from the shock, I think it's become a problem.
When Bayley won as well, when she cashed in, that ruled as well. And of course, Seth Rollins. I see your point. I don't
think it should go away forever. But like the fact that there's 2 of them a year every year, it's just like just sit it out for like 2 years, and then when you bring it back, it'll be really meaningful again.
They need to do that with a lot of their concepts though. Like I don't need a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view.
But like that's the problem. It's like all of these things have just become content. Like it's just like it's Hell in a Cell month, it's TLC month, instead of being like, you know, when like what's the most meaningful Hell in a Cell announcement that I can remember in recent memory, like announcement, not the match itself, because there's been some very good Hell in a Cell matches, was the Undertaker Triple H one at WrestleMania.
Sure. It's
like that's the because it's not like we're just doing a Hell in a Cell this month because that's the name of the pay-per-view. It's Undertaker, end of an era, Undertaker Triple H, WrestleMania. It warrants Hell in a Cell. And same thing with TLC. They just do it for the sake of doing it. They need to rejig it. Like if I were taking over WWE Creative, if Vince gave me the book, like that's the first thing I'd do. I'd dump all these theme pay-per-views. It's all TNA's fault. They started it with Lockdown. They ruined everything.
I was gonna say, if Vince gave you the book, that's what you'd do. You'd rejigger all of that, and you'd hire Elix Skipper.
Yeah, he can walk steel cages. It'd be great.
There we go. That's the card that we have for now. I think, you know, Garrett and I are both in agreement that WWE probably has something up its sleeve. It feels a little thin as far as matches goes right now. There'll probably be an announcement or two in the over the course of the next 24 hours or so. But yeah, overall, what's your feeling on the card? Good? Do you think it's going to be a good show, a great show?
I think it'll be a good show. I think both chambers have too many good wrestlers in them for this to be a bad wrestling show. So, and this match is hung on the chambers because there's barely anything else on the show. So
there's nothing. Yeah, absolutely. I really think the SmackDown one is going to rule. And then you brought up the fact that Jeff Hardy is probably going to do something ridiculously stupid. So now I'm a little more excited for the Raw one. Should be, but I agree. The chamber matches should be fun. I'm excited to see how that's going to go. Thank you very much for joining me today, Garrett Kidney, to talk about WWE. I know it's one of your favorite subjects of all time.
Woo.
Garrett, I really did have a good time, and I'm glad we finally were able to spend some time talking about wrestling, chatting with each other. Why don't you let the people know properly where a YouTube gamer like you can be found on social media?
So upset. You can follow me on Twitter at Garrett Kidney, GARRETTKIDNEY. My name is underneath there. You can see my Twitter handle down there on the screen. If you would like to watch my YouTube gaming videos, you can do it at youtube.com/Garrett Kidney. I just did a video on the latest Nintendo Direct. I'm probably going to do a Pokemon anniversary video this week if I'm not lazy, so we can all celebrate the 25th anniversary of Pokemon. And I'll be very excited about it. And also, me and my brother do a Disney review podcast, Magic by Design, where we review all the Disney animated features in order. We just did Lilo and Stitch, which is personally one of my favorite films of all time, and I love it so much. And this week we're doing Treasure Planet, which is actually, it's okay. It's pretty solid. But you'll get extended takes if you listen to Magic by Design on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. And that's me. That's me doing my plugs. I'm all plugged out.
There you go. You see it's okay. By the way, it's okay if you never let me live that down. The introduction I'm
going to add it to my Twitter description, my Twitter profile, YouTube gamer personality.
Thank you so much, Garrett. I really appreciate it. And honestly, if at the bare minimum you're not following Garrett on Twitter, you're doing Twitter wrong. It's just as simple as that. You absolutely need more Garrett Kidney in your feed. Thank you everyone for popping in this morning to join us live. Hope you enjoyed the show tomorrow. Thank you everyone watching or listening on your own accord as well. Hope you all enjoy Elimination Chamber this weekend. Hope you have a great weekend on top of that, and we'll see you next time.